What's up, everyone? I've been coaching people pleasers for like 6 years now, and one of the things I've noticed is kind of counterintuitive truth, which is that people pleasers are often actually worse towards those closest to them, those that they love the most, than they are to strangers or detached work colleagues, associates, and so on. Basically, the closer you are to a people pleaser, the worse they're going to be. In general, not always, but in general. And I just want to talk about this particular type of people pleaser and why it happens. I first noticed it. I had a client who she was the mad people pleaser at work, so she could never say no to anything. She was always working extra hours. Everybody just used her as like a slave. And she just had a big smile on her face. She was the kind of the cheery, jolly office girl. And she would just get piled on and used and abused, sometimes deliberately, sometimes just because she let it happen or asked for it. And then she'd go home and she would turn into this tyrant where her husband and her daughter, who loved her very much, were actually afraid of her because of how volatile her moods were, how difficult she was to please, how easily irritated and upset she was, and unpredictable. And just, all that stored up resentment from the day's worth of bowing and scraping to everyone else, she just took it out on her family. And I just had a session this morning with another client who does something similar. He had an appointment with a stranger, a potential client, and that stranger was 2 hours late, and he waited for him. He waited 2 hours. And then later on, he went to go pick up his girlfriend, and she was 1 minute late to getting to the car. And he had a massive tantrum at her. So this is what happens when people aren't honest. When they aren't honest about their anger, when they don't set boundaries, and they don't hold those boundaries, and when they don't respect themselves. So what happens is these people get themselves into a loop. It's a pattern of events that recurs over and over. So what happens first is that the person gets irritated, that some boundary gets crossed. This happens to everyone. It happens to every person on the planet, and will do until the end of time. Things just annoy us. So this boundary gets crossed, and immediately what the person will do next is make a safety assessment. Who crossed my boundary, and how safe are they? Now, when I say safe, what it means is, how honest can I be with this person without negative consequences, particularly the consequence of them leaving me, but also the consequence of my reputation, violence. What kind of risks are at play here if I was to express my anger, my irritation, honestly? Now, if a people pleaser's in that situation, the less they know someone, combined with how much impact that person may or may not be able to have on their life, will determine how honest they are. So if they don't really know someone and can't predict them, and they're not sure what kind of impact the person will have, or they're sure it will be a big impact, they're far less likely to be honest. Whereas if it's like a family member or something like that, they're happy to be honest because they think, I feel secure, this person's never going to leave me, they'll love me no matter what I say, and so I can let anything out. So they're making this kind of assessment. Now, if the assessment comes out as unsafe, what the people pleaser will do next is tolerate bad behavior. So they'll suppress their anger. They'll talk themselves out of it, like, oh, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and everyone makes mistakes, or maybe it's a good reason for why I have to wait 2 hours. Whatever it is, they have to tell themselves to justify not expressing their anger, to get out of the guilt of lying. And they'll suppress that anger. They'll push it down inside, fuming, but pretending they're not, telling themselves that they're okay. And minutes will tick by, hours, days, weeks, relationships, jobs. They'll just tolerate shitty treatment, disrespectful treatment from others. And every second spent tolerating that behavior is a second of disrespect to yourself. So as you're tolerating it, you're building up resentment, which quickly becomes rage. You resent them because you think they're doing this to you. You resent yourself for being too weak to do anything about it, for feeling like a powerless victim, without really seeing that the truth is you resent not being honest about how you feel. That you don't want to give yourself that kind of awareness, because that would call on you to be honest in the future and have confrontations and risk and stuff. So instead, you resent other people, you resent the world for being unfair, you resent life for being, disadvantaged to you and so on, and you're building up all this resentment, and it's just simmering in there like a pot of toxic waste. And then you leave the situation and you go into other situations, and essentially at this point your body's looking for a safe place to release this toxicity. You got all this pent-up rage and resentment, and needs to get out. It doesn't go anywhere. Suppressing emotions doesn't get rid of them. It just piles them down, concentrates them. The more you do it, the bigger the explosion's going to be. But they're coming out one way or the other. They'll either explode inwardly or implode, depression, suicidality, drug abuse, all that kind of stuff, or they'll explode outward, where you yell at people, destroy property, make really impulsive, crazy decisions, whatever it is, they explode. So this person's sitting there, they're all pent up, they're all built up, they've used dishonesty to suppress their anger, and then they get themselves into a safe situation, like they're home with their partner and kids, or they're at a family dinner, or they're with their one friend who never judges them, or they're just in the car where nobody can see them, and the brain goes, here, I can let it out now, and they snap. And it's what's called a puke, where all that rage and anger comes out. And so they explode. They explode on the person who didn't deserve it, but triggered them. They're in their car, punching the steering wheel, screaming, shouting, crying. Or if they don't feel safe with anyone ever, some people pleasers don't even feel safe with their own partners and so on, they implode. Eventually, they just go bang, and it happens to themselves. There might be self-harm, or I used to do like risk-taking behavior. Like I'd walk through pubs and bump into guys. Like I kind of wanted to get my ass kicked, or I'd drink and take lots of drugs because I didn't feel safe with anybody. I didn't feel safe to let my anger out, even with my own parents or anything. But most people have one person or two people they'll feel safe with, or a situation where they can let it out, and that's where they explode. Now, shortly after they explode, some part of them registers like that was unreasonable. This person is someone I care about, or this is a situation that doesn't count for it. Or there's just a kind of a general guilt and shame about how poorly you handle all this, and how much of a weak victim you see yourself as, and how powerless and hopeless your situation seems, and so on. So right after the explosion, there's this remorse. Poor me, poor life, I'm such a bad person, guilt and shame. And that makes your confidence really fragile. So now you're easily irritable. You're fragile emotionally, you're on edge from shame and guilt, and so now it's easy to irritate you, and back around you go. Somebody irritates you easily, you make a safety assessment, you find it unsafe, so you suppress and tolerate, build up rage and resentment, round and round and round you go. So I just want to point this out because there's a lot of people who will see this, and you do this. You wonder, why do I get so angry in these random situations, without realizing it's not random. You've been saving up. You've been investing. And this is the return on that investment. You've been building up. Nobody punches someone in the face because of one piece of anger. They do it because they've been built up for weeks or months. This is where murder happens. When a normally sane person commits a murder, it's not because someone just ticked them off a little bit. It's because they've been suppressing anger their entire life. Okay? So when you binge drink, or you do risky behaviors, or you shout at people, or you randomly quit things that were going well, whatever it is, those angry moments of just reckless behavior, understand it's because you're not being honest and setting boundaries and respecting yourself in other areas of life. You got to look at your life. How well do I treat the people closest to me compared to complete strangers who have never given me a thing? And what you find in a people pleaser is a kind of inverted funnel. The further someone is out from you, the less they matter to you, the better treatment they get. You're really polite and nice to total strangers, and you're grumpy and surly with your own parents, A confident person, that funnel is reversed. The further out you are from them, the less time, attention, love that you get from them. The closer in, the more generosity and spirit and everything that you get, right? Because confident people can be honest. So if someone irritates them, they get it out like that. They will never endure more than 5 minutes of irritation before speaking up. Whereas a people pleaser might endure something for months. They'll be bullied for years by a boss without speaking up once. And then they take that out on their family, or they take it out on themselves. So I just wanted to point it out there. If you're someone who feels that you can't control your anger, or that you feel that you're really powerless and helpless and things are unfair, just know you're doing this to yourself. You're doing this to yourself by disrespecting yourself when you're irritated. Instead of speaking your mind, or at least leaving the situation and going somewhere else, adapting, you sit there, you suppress, and you tolerate shitty treatment. And that's not anybody else's fault. You're choosing that. Okay, you're enduring that by choice. You change that decision, you'll change your whole life, and you'll change your relationships with other people. Hope that helps. I speak from the heart. This is something I had to go through myself. I was more of a self-harmer than anything else, but occasionally there was a couple of times where I punched one of my best friends in the chest really hard once. I just snapped. There's other times I've done drink driving, or driving really fast and kind of wanting something to go wrong. There's been plenty of times where I've put others in danger because I didn't manage my anger properly. And I didn't realize that it's because I'm letting other people walk all over me who haven't earned that right in any way. Hope that helps. Catch you guys all next time.